Hey, tonight on the Old Time Mini Show, we'll be making molds for the most dangerous monster in the 1980 Star Frontiers game. It's man! Hey, welcome to another episode of Dan's Old Time Mini Show, and if you're joining us live on this Thursday evening, so glad you could join us. We were off last week because I was a little under the weather, but back in pretty good spirits here, and to this point, we've made all of the alien player character miniatures. We've duplicated from the original 1983 miniatures for Star Frontiers. So I've got, for the players in my current campaign, I do have a set of Dralicites, the mold guys. I've got a set of Yazirians, the monkey guys, and we somewhat surprisingly succeeded at making several of the Vrusk insectoid spider type characters. So I have all that, and the last player character type that I have to make are the humans, as a matter of fact. So figured I should have some official Star Frontiers human duplicates available for the players in my current campaign. So we're going to do that tonight. And the other thing we kind of discovered by happy accident last time is that it's when we are in the kitchen casting in our lead metal, it is pretty convenient to actually have two molds going at the same time. So you can pour one, let it cool, and while that's cooling, you can work on a second one and kind of cycle through. It was pretty efficient. So now that I've got my mold making capacities kind of back up to par where they were some number of years ago when I used to do this, I figure I'll make two at a time. And fortunately, in that 1983 set of miniatures, you do have two separate human miniatures, one man and one woman. And I don't know if it might be a little odd that they don't have gender differences for the other races, just the people. Maybe that's like human. Maybe that's human eyesight. I can't tell the difference between the other ones, but for the humans, we are apparently more sensitive to that, I guess. So here I've got a guy human and I've got a woman human in the Star Frontier set, and they're both pretty cool. They have the 1983 set has one copy of like this in just like normal garb, I guess. And then there's also another version that's in a spacesuit. And I haven't had a whole lot of like spacesuit engagements or encounters in my Star Frontiers games, so I'm probably not going to duplicate those. But these human miniatures, the man and the woman, I thought were pretty cool, so I am going to do these. And you might possibly make a comment about how much larger the weaponry was that they gave the guy. I don't know. It's 1983, kids. I didn't make this. Yes, thank you, Jonathan. It is kind of important that we can tell the difference. So the guy miniature, if I can get that in focus there, has a rather enormous, what's pretty clearly a laser rifle, right? And they have some cool goggles, and I kind of like this. It might be possibly a little bit unwieldy, but in the Star Frontiers game, if you can afford it, they have a power backpack that's plugged into the laser rifle, so you have a good amount of ammunition there. The one thing with both of these, particularly with like a really long range weapon like that, is it does come out of the box possibly a little bent. So I've attempted, right, and I'm always cautious. I guess from this angle, I hadn't thought to look at it from this angle. You can see it's pretty bent there. So I'm always cautious about fiddling with it. I'm always worried that I'm going to break off one of these spindly long elements. But let me see if I can straighten that out a little bit better with my fingers before we put it in the mold, and then have a whole bunch of duplicates that are all bent the same way. I don't know if you guys have any clever tricks for straightening metal miniatures. It's pretty soft. I mean, that's why, obviously, lead isn't great environmentally, but one of the reasons why it does get used is, of course, it's a really soft metal. So it is pretty easy to work. So I actually, right off the bat, I think that's already better. That's pretty good, actually. Yeah, okay, that's actually, I think that's good. You know, and I can always work on the duplicates that come out when I cast them, but of course I'd rather minimize that and get it right the first time. Seems like the tip of it might be just a little bit droopy. That's pretty good. That looks legitimate to me. I think the design itself might be just a tiny bit asymmetrical, but okay, I think I'm going to call that. Yeah. Okay, that's straight enough. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then the woman miniature is also pretty cool. So kind of like if this was D&D, I'd probably call that like a rogue character. So has like a hood on, keeping her profile a little bit low there. Clearly skin tight outfit, which makes sense. You want to be sleek. You want to be able to move around. She's pointing the gun. I mean, I guess she's looking and pointing the gun a little bit low. So if I could straighten the arm out. I guess it's not too bad because I guess she's leaning back a little bit. But if I could straighten the arm out to be a little bit more horizontal, I think that might look better. Actually, one trick I learned recently was because particularly my Yazirian monkey guy miniatures were leaning too far forward, right? They were leaning kind of awkwardly forward. So what I found online was a suggestion to take a hairdryer and just zap the miniature with a hairdryer for about a minute, warm it up, then you can kind of work with it pretty easily. So I was able to lean back my Yazirian miniatures to be a little bit more natural looking. I don't think I need to do that here. Again, with a really thin arm like this, I can succeed pretty well just bending it with my fingers if I'm careful. That looks pretty good, man. So I think I raised the arm just a little bit, and I think that looks pretty good. The barrel of the laser pistol here looks pretty straight. She also has a whole bunch of pouches on her leggings, which I feel was anticipating 1990s comic books by Rob Liefeld and people like that. Had a whole bunch of leg pouches. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so I think that's, again, for something that's been in the box for 40 years, I think that looks pretty good. So that's what that is. Those are the two that we are going to be making molds for tonight. And let's get started with that if I can remember how to do this. So I'll get out my Lego knockoffs and start making boxes for both of them. So this, I think, will be pretty easy about how to align them in the box. I'll have the pour hole coming in their head like we do. Seems to work pretty well. The guns, if they're approximately horizontal, that seems to work pretty well. We'll probably have to make an air vent for this thing by the time we get done. But I think, I don't know, I guess if I tilted this a little bit, you know, okay, with this one, yeah, if I tilted this a little bit so the metal was flowing down the gun, that might make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to try to do that. She already has her gun a little bit going down, so I guess I don't have to worry about that. But I'll have the pour hole come in their head. That'll work perfectly fine here. I think that's where the seam was on the original one. This guy has like hair details, so I don't know if I'm going to screw that up. I wonder where the pour hole was initially. Can never tell. But probably easy, so I just put it into his head there and deal with that. Yeah, you're making me, yeah, Knick-Knack, thanks for chiming in. Just as you said that, I was like, I might possibly be losing some detail on these. So I think that, and on this, yeah, you're right. I think I am going to have trouble with this guy. So I do think that at the time they would be declared to be 25 millimeter scale. And obviously over the years, what people market in that scale have inflated. So they would look smaller than modern miniatures, but I think they would be called 25 millimeters. Actually, I guess I don't have a metric ruler with me right now. But I know I've measured these in the past actually, and it's just about 25 millimeters to their eye level for a person. So I think it's legitimately that actual 25 millimeter scale that TSR was using in the 80s was customary. Right, exactly. The 40K 28 millimeters, right, or heroic scale, I think some people will call them. And over time, things, of course, get bigger and bigger and bigger, so you have to trade up. If we have time tonight, I have more extensive comments about scaling issues. And actually, so in brief, so these figures here are coming out of the 1983 set that TSR released, and then there's a 1984 set. And what we've seen is the scale actually varies kind of wildly from miniature to miniature. So like for example, the Vrusk in one box are wildly different size than the Vrusk in a different box. The humans are the ones that got about consistent. And the other ones are like kind of weirdly all over the map. Oh, interesting. I myself, and you know, people that I play with and we have on the channel semi-frequently have gotten a lot more into classic wargaming, particularly Warhammer and 40K. I myself haven't ever had 40K miniatures myself. Weirdly, I probably said this before, weirdly, the only 40K thing that I ever had was Battlefleet Gothic, the spaceship tactical game. And weirdly, I never found anybody to play it with me. I probably said that. So it's still sitting in my closet, unused. Yeah, that makes sense, Knick-Knack, of using, you know, different scales for different types of creatures. And you know what? Even before D&D, in the chainmail fantasy rules that predate D&D, that was literally the first page Like the first page of the fantasy rules there said, yeah, for goblins use 15 millimeters, and for people use 25 millimeters, and for for ogres you ought to use 30 millimeters, and for giants you can use 40 or 50 millimeters or something like that. It was actually the first thing that they specified. Right, the Cassidy spaceships really struck my fancy, actually. And I have a painting plan for them that I never got around to. And maybe you can rationalize the following. The only problem I had with the Battlefleet Gothic backstory, and I'm the kind of person this would be bothered by, well, actually, is that the bad guys are supposed to be Imperial ships that went bad and what is the word I'm looking for? Mutinied, right? But their ships don't look anything like the Imperial ships. So I'm like, why don't their ships look like mutinied Imperial ships? Huh? Answer me that. And while you do that, okay, so this guy is clearly going to fit in our molding box pretty well. I'm doing all this the same size. I should get a container that's specific for the rubber, that's specifically dialed into this size, because I'm using the same size molding box for everything now. And if it fits the big Vrust miniature, it'll clearly fit this stuff. All right, and here is our knockoff Play-Doh molding clay. David, they're 10,000 years older. Yep. Mm-hmm. They've been there you go. Being stuck in a hell dimension for 10,000 years will do that for you. Yes. Okay, that's legit. The ships have been mutated by the forces of chaos, perhaps. I guess that's a pretty good answer, actually. Okay, good answer, good answer. Did I mention that if we have extra time tonight, I'd also like to do some painting? I actually have never liked painting miniatures, and weirdly, for some reason, with this stream, and maybe with the setup that I have now, I've actually found myself for the first time ever going, geez, I wish I had more time for painting. In the last week or two. What's up with that? That's crazy. Move this a little bit. So I'm actually going to try to accelerate my process for making the molds, and if that succeeds, we'll use some time tonight to do some painting of a particular miniature that I don't think I've shown on screen before. To this same game. Hey, Laura Sudo, you have not missed the campaign update. We didn't, a number of us, so in addition to me being off last week, because I caught a cold here, multiple people in our gaming group also had colds and stuff. So we actually didn't play according to plan last week because too many of us had missed our saving throws. Okay, so there's that. Now I'll get the pour hole. I have a whole bag of different pour hole options at this point. Okay, so we made some new portholes a couple of weeks ago. Ideally I was trying to make them parabolic, but can't figure out how to make paraboloids with my fingers. So now they look like this. Okay, so this guy's going to go in a little tilted. Get the metal flowing down there is the plan. So the porthole's going to be just slightly off center. Stick his head right there. Okay, and since that big laser rifle is more, is off on one side of him, I packed in a little bit more dough there underneath the gap where he's holding the rifle to one side. So hopefully that works. Seemed to work with the Vrusk miniature the other week, so I think that's pretty good. Yeah. Okay. You should not blame Max. Max was one of the very few people that was available last Friday. he was ready to go, actually. The rest of us were all conked out. Okay, so there's Mr. Human and his traveling junk show. And here comes Ms. Human. Actually, in lieu of the actual game, Max and I actually got on Discord and he just played some survival horror video game from 15 years ago. And I was like, that was my TV watching for the night. Then I jokingly suggested that he play Pathologic instead. See, so really it's you, Jonathan. Don't blame Max when you couldn't be there. That's a lot of gunk there. I don't have my dental stuff. You know what? Just take that brick out, Dan. Okay. Take the base on. Anyway, we're all good now. We're all good now. Yeah, time flies. I was hoping I could actually get these molds made in an hour here, and I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do that. Okay, there's the box. Le boîte. that. I have a feeling that having succeeded at the insect Vrust castings, that everything else is going to feel really simple to me now. Like I might have broken my metric for what counts as a challenging mold at this point. Now it's like, oh, this is really easy. Well, it doesn't have 10 limbs in a whole bunch of different directions. Why are we even bothering? Okay, so it's about halfway up. That's good. I think we may not have William in the chat tonight like normal, so I really, really have to remember to put the registers in at the point where he would normally yell at me that I normally need. I'm going to really have to remember it on my own, or just anybody else. Feel free to yell at the right time. That's a really nice miniature. I really like this. You know, it's obviously, you know, pretty retro. You know, even for the 80s, it's kind of retro to the 50s or something like that. I really kind of like that. Okay. Put her in face up. Here's what I'm going to do. So right in the middle. She's actually really tall, actually. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. So under her left leg, it's kind of bent. So I poured some more clay under there to support it. There's this empty space, this empty space under her left elbow that I'm not sure. I guess that's gonna get filled in with the rubber here, I guess, if I'm thinking properly. But I think that's pretty good. So good question, Jonathan. Is there no mini in power armor? That wasn't, I think we might have mentioned this at some point in the past. That wasn't part of the Star Frontiers rules. There wasn't any power armor in the basic initial rule set. There was a supplement later on that added it, had it on the cover, and as we probably said before, everybody hates that supplement. It is terrible. So much like Matrix 2 and 3, many of us deny that actually ever existed. You know what? Right now is a good time for the registers, actually. Lest I forget later. I use these dowels. That's what I do. Now, that having been said, you know, the miniatures that are in spacesuits and stuff, they're pretty bulky. You could probably get away with claiming that that's what they are, actually. In fact, the bad guys Sathar worms, their spacesuits actually kind of look like that to me. It doesn't. It's like it's way too heavy. It's like, why did you bulked yourself up by like a factor of 3? And if it's not clear, when we're with what we call the registers are the little pokey holes that are going to make tabs, so the two sections of the mold will fit together nicely. So that's really critically important, and I forget it almost all the time. All right, so there's that. All right, that's pretty good. Let me run over to my window, and I will apply the release agent. I think that's the order of operations that I do. I debate this with myself every single time. So as I do this, I will remind everybody one more time that we are trying to be as safe as we possibly can here. The miniatures are lead-based, so I'm kind of careful. I don't get it near food products. I'll wash my hands carefully afterwards. And the release agent I got here, the silicone rubber I'm going to pour with, they do have some vapors, so you want to keep your room very well ventilated. I keep my windows open all the time here in the room where I'm working, even in the depths of winter, even in the height of summer. So it's starting to get a little bit warm now. So now my complaint is going to switch over to being too hot most of the time. And I also have an air quality monitor here on my desk that I'm checking all the time. And everything's in the green zone. So far, so good. But this right here is the worst thing in the world. So I lean out my, my window here for this, and I'll be back in just a minute. So that's one of the first times ever where I managed to do that without blowing all of the release agent right back in the window in my face. So I guess the air's going the right direction tonight. It's weird here in Brooklyn, New York, where I am. The weather forecast has supposed to have been rain for like about the last 3 or 4 days, and we basically haven't had any, more or less. It was supposed to be raining all day today, and it hasn't. So now I'm going to mix up the rubber for both of them, is what I'll do. Our 2-part Umu 30 compound that we got going on all the time. Again, great product for beginners if you're a beginning mold maker. More advanced products have all kinds of weird things you have to deal with, like venting and mixing and weighing and stuff like that. So this you can just measure by sight. And you take an equal amount of both of these compounds and gently mix it up, is what I've learned recently. The gently part was the part that I wasn't doing up until a couple weeks ago. So how much am I? I do the same amount every time. Why am I confused tonight about how much I normally? Was it like? It was like 3/4 of one of these units, so 2 of them ought to be about 1.5. Is that what I was doing? Maybe a little bit more than that. I think that's about it. Why have I not had this problem in the past? So I'm going to do just a tiny bit of math here. So I'm filling in like 3/4 of an inch by so it's 3/4 of an inch by 1 3/4 inches, which is 7 quarters, right? Times another 2 because I'm doing this. Times 2, but then divided by 2 because for each part. So 49 times 3, like 3 less than 1/5, 147 over 16. What kind of friggin'? Get a calculator here. 147 divided by 16. So it's about 9 cubic inches. Divided by 3.6. What? That can't be right. That's ridiculous. That's huge. What did I just do wrong? Five times 1.75 times 0.75. Okay, this what I'm getting here makes a lot more sense. So, yeah, right. Okay, so there's that, and divide by the 3.6. Okay, so 1 part ought to be about 2/3 of one of these units on my cup. 2/3. That's what I'm going for. All right, so pour in. Well, I have it here, but I forgot how big how big these were. See, and this I should get another cup, and I should actually realign to this sized box, because that's the thing that I'm forgetting is how big is this space. So this whole thing would be a lot easier if I just got another cup and measured according to one of those spaces that I'm doing all the time now. All right, so pink stuff first, and again, this stuff is really thick and viscous and kind of a pain to stir. A little bit easier now that I've got some empty space in the bottle, actually. Stir that for a while. The other thing I'll point out is we were trying to reduce the number of bubbles that I was getting last time, so that we were seeing 2 strategies suggested. One was to start painting the rubber on the miniature with a brush first and get like 1 smooth coat on that way. And the other suggestion was to pour a very thin amount into the corner of the box, let it slowly ooze over the miniature smoothly. And with the Vrusk, we tried both of those. And I think that the pour it in the corner method was good enough. I think things were better, being careful about that. And so instead of gunking up a brush, I think I will just pour it in the corner. And the other thing I was looking at my notes here is, and also tilt the box to get it pouring over it more directly. So I think that's the method I'll use going forward. Okay, so hopefully that's good. Yeesh. If I'm not careful, I can make just enormous messes with this stuff. Trying to get about 2/3 of that unit there. Again, remember, it's so viscous, it's going to pile up and confuse me about how much I poured in. 2/3. Okay. Pretty close. Another issue is, once you start using this stuff, like how long is the shelf life once you open up the bottle? And more advanced stuff, the directions are like, you ought to use it immediately. And I can't remember what the recommendation is, but it does say here, you can see here, it says in boldface, important, limited shelf life, use as soon as possible. And at this point, I've been using the same bottles since like February or March? I think March or something. So it's been at least a couple months, working fine. Pretty sure that I've used these, bit by bit over at least 6 months to a year, I think have worked. And then other times, I think I have had a couple containers where I opened it up, I used it just a couple times, and they did solidify on me kind of quicker than normal, which was kind of disappointing. I guess I got like a whole unit there. Blue stuff, much easier to stir. Alrighty, so now I want this just to equal out to, I guess, about my second unit line. That stuff is, the blue stuff is just much nicer to work with, I gotta say. All right, so now I'm gonna mix this up, and this is one of the things I've been refining, is don't stir it up vigorously like was my instinct, but to smoothly. The easier you do it, the less bubbles you get in it. If I do this right, the blue stuff and the pink stuff kind of come together in kind of a nice light purple color. Smoothly, he said. Also kind of scrape the sides here to get all the pink stuff on the bottom up. That looks pretty smooth to me, so I think that's pretty good actually. A couple bubbles in there. Hopefully it's not too bad. All right, so pouring it really smoothly, hopefully from a fairly high height. Get one narrow stream in the corner. And then also tilt the box up so that it slides easily over the miniatures. So just try to find the place that's got the biggest gap in it, which I guess is over there. Might have been a bit much. Okay, hopefully that was okay. I might not have needed to tilt that up right at the start like I did. Pretty sure I have plenty of rubber here for both of the molds. Okay. Call that good there. And now the guy. Okay, so I'm going to start pouring it in the corner before I tilt it up. Oh geez, I'm getting a giant slob of this coming out. Yeah, that wasn't quite what we wanted. Oops. It does seem like my pouring technique is getting very few bubbles in the mix, which is good. All right, so once you get it on the surface, you really just care about the surface of the miniature itself. So once you get that really covered, you don't have to be quite so careful with the rest of it, I think. Seems like this stuff seems to be tightening up faster than I'm used to. Like, it seems like most of it in the cup is already pretty stiff. And if the temperature, the humidity or something has made that happen. Okay, now I'm making a huge mess. Ah. Oh God! I just flicked something off the edge of my desk here. That was very inelegant right at the end. Yeah, right. It does seem thicker. It's certainly enormously much warmer than when I've been working previously. So you go back, 2 weeks, it was still kind of cold here. And I don't know, humidity should be is about 40%, so I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's like that thickened up really fast. I'm thinking about whether I should. So I kind of have this mound. I have this mound of rubber, which is like not super elegant, but I feel like trying to correct for that is probably going to make things worse. So that's just what this mold is going to be like. Don't eat any of this. To be clear, see, none of this should be put anywhere near anybody's mouth or in your gasoline. All right. Okay, so get the. You know what? I guess that will at least let me remember which one's the guy and which one's the woman. Actually, so the one that's messed up is the guy miniature, for what that's worth. So there's our two molds, two half molds for tonight. Obviously, we'll come back in a week and we'll flip it over and we'll make the other side once we dig the clay off the miniature there. So pretty good. So, this process is pretty straightforward these days. So here we are about 10 o'clock here on Thursday night. Sorry, Lucida, right. I didn't specifically say don't eat this stuff. My bad. I'll put out that on the safety warning in the future. Good point. Don't put the lead miniatures in your mouth, kids. Good point. All right, so takes about an hour. Once you get a little practice here, I can make 2 molds at once of this size, obviously, and we're chatting a little bit here too, so that's pretty reasonable. So let's switch to the painting portion of the evening, and I'll put away some of this stuff, some of these molds here. And this and this and this. This and this. Okay, what do we got? So the when TSR made these Star Frontiers miniatures, right, 1983, 84, 85 type thing, they made, I think there were, I think by the time they were done, they had 4 big boxes of player characters and also spaceships, and then they had, let me think here, probably 4 half-size boxes of special stuff like pirate spaceships or robot characters or things like that would be somewhat less used. Great, but then and I at this point I've collected most of that stuff. And then they also had a series of blister packs that had generally like a couple of special aliens or monsters from the Volturnus campaign. And the Volturnus campaign is the initial adventure in the box set, and then they had kind of an adventure path built around that, and that's what I'm using in my campaign at the moment. So they had these blister packs of 1 or 2 or 3 monsters from Volturnus or something like that. And I'm not committing to getting all of that stuff. Some of it would be, frankly, pretty rarely used, and I'm not going to worry about that. But I did splurge a couple weeks ago on one of these guys, which in the Volturnus campaign are called... Oh, wow, that's a huge mess that just happened behind me. Just hold that thought. Oh, wow. Ugh. Okay, so apparently I put my newspaper with the rubber encrusted dowels in a very unstable place, and it fell on my floor. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No problem. So anyway, there is, in the Volturnus campaign, there's at least one really critical apex predator that is, okay, and what language was it tonight? And so spoilers, the bad guy Sathar villains that try to invade your good guy space, among their horrible tyrannical things they do is that they take normal creatures on the planets of the frontier and do genetic modifications to them to turn them into horrible, terrifying monsters and release them in mass to terrorize the civilian populations. So this particular creature, which pops up a number of times in the Volturnus campaign at key moments, is one of those things. And so what they did was they took a very popular house cat in the frontier and genetically modified so it's a giant feline lion tiger like predator, except that it's a giant tiger and it runs as fast as a cheetah, and it also has a whole bunch of tentacles to grab you, and I think it has acid, and it also has a poison stinger in its tail, and it also has a secret mouth in its chest that opens up to grab onto people, and its eyes pop out of its head on eye stalks for better vision, and it has a reflective coat, so lasers bounce off it, and it like runs at like 200 miles an hour or some crazy stuff, so you can't even see it coming at you, and it's reflective, so it's camouflaged automatically. And yes, it's simply called the Quick Death. That's what it is. Yep. So it pops up a sufficiently number of times in really critical parts of the story that I did get a blister pack with a Quick Death in it. And I'm not going to duplicate it. I don't need a dozen Quick Deaths or anything like that. But I did prime it. I did pull it out and I did prime it, and so I will have an actual official Quick Death miniature on the table. So I was kind of, I think at a prior time in my life I never would have thought to bother to get it, but I'm like, yeah, all right, it's not too, you can pick that up. It's not like there's an enormous amount of people vying for these things. So it's a pretty good supply. You can get them on eBay. They're not too expensive, and with shipping, I don't know, it's like $10, $15, I don't know, something like that. So, and I'll have an official Quick Death miniature. Now, this is the point where, I'm kind of looking forward to painting this actually, so I have some ideas for it, where you do run into the problem whereby the scaling of stuff is generally unpredictable, or monsters that in the rules say they're enormous, for budgetary purposes, you're casting them in lead, they didn't actually make an equivalently enormous miniature and put it on sale. So there are, actually in the core rulebook, for example, there's a giant dragon cat called a Megasaurus. And in the book, it's supposed to be fully 10 meters long, about 30 feet long. And so in scale, compared to the human miniatures, right, that thing really ought to be about 5 inches long on the table, which would be, enormous. They sold a Megasaurus miniature, and I'm pretty sure it was like about half that size in length terms, which obviously is about 1/8 as big by volume. So, and let me pull out just for sizing comparison. Let me zoom out a little bit. Let me put our player character miniatures next to this thing. And so, of course, I don't have now. I just put the humans in the rubber molds, so they're not accessible. But okay, so here is a human in a spacesuit, and feel free to call it combat armor if you want. That's a human in a spacesuit. This is the Yazirian, right? The monkey guy miniature that we're using, that we made previously. Here's our Dralocyte, which is obviously the fairly small blob guy, and then here's the Vrusk that we made. Wait, that's the one in the spacesuit. Right, there's the Vrusk miniature that we duplicated the other week. Got it to stand up there. Okay, so there is this Quick Death, and then if you compare to the illustration, and I don't think they ever specifically say exactly how big a Quick Death is, but it is supposed to be large. And if you compare that to like a sample illustration in the book where one's in a fight, I'm going to flip over here to another image here. Okay, so the illustration in the book is it's clearly at least 2 or 3 times larger than a person, right? Is your illustration. You got some people fighting it, you got a Dralocyte, you got a Yazirian who's bravely jumped on the back of it trying to strangle it like that. And clearly the Quick Death is in the text here is clearly much larger than the people, and that's not reflected in the miniature here. So that's the kind of thing I get a little bit bothered by. I'm like, I wish, not ideal, not perfect. right? I do wish that if I plop down the miniature, it like, looms over your player characters would be kind of a lot more gripping there. So, it is what it is. I've got the official miniature. I suppose in some other universe you could scan it and then zoom it up and then make a 3D printer of it, possibly. The other thing I saw looking online at what people did, and it's something that I think William suggested like a week or two back actually, was to kit bash your own. And one thing I noticed is, I guess there's a guy with a blog titled Seawolf's Den, and at some point he kit bashed his own quick death. And so he went to the dollar store and he got like a tiger miniature, and he got something with tentacles, and he got something with a different head on it, and so put together the the panther-like body and a lion-like head and a poison stinger and some tentacles on it. And the thing is much larger, and it, I think, is a more legitimate scaling actually, and painted it custom. So that is another legitimate way you could go about it. Let me flip back to my desktop here. So that's certainly another way you could go about it, but I don't mind. Actually, this probably not as bad as I thought actually, but so for what it's worth, this is actually not as tall as the human miniature that I have here, or the Yazirian miniature, for what it's worth. So, not, a little underwhelming, but I understand that the price point, if you made giant miniatures out of lead for these things, would have been possibly prohibitive. So another case, I can understand why they did that. But I like, that having been said, I do like the miniature. Get these guys out of the way. Again, not going to duplicate it. I just went ahead and primed it. I'm going to paint my one here and just kind of look at some other detail here in the priming. What I should do, I'm supposed to do that and then do this. So you can see it's got the eye stocky things pointing up off the head there. It's got a fairly nasty looking teeth there. Some claws. So you can see that the kind of has a skirt of tentacles. So I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't full on make the tentacles out in space like with the Vrusk. So that's a little, obviously made it easier for them to cast this, but it's got the tentacles there. It's got, I don't think they gave it the chest maw is still hidden, but it's got the tentacles there, and that tail there is hiding a stinger that it can shoot a poison stinger at a range and things like that. So my thought here is, how could you, so none of the illustrations in the official books are in color. So it's like you could do this a bunch of ways. I mean, cats come in a whole bunch of different colors, obviously, so you could do a whole bunch of different things like that. The thing certainly appears initially in the desert is one thing. And I think for like fan illustrations that are colored, they use, like my initial take was maybe make it silvery actually. Most of the fan takes on it make them like an orange tabby tiger kind of yellow orange type color. So I figure I'm going to kind of go in that direction, that same direction. The thing that I think a lot of people miss, again because it's in text, not in illustration, is the text does say that it is, I believe it says, moist and reflective. And so the reflectivity gives it both the camouflage and also the ability to have laser weapons at least partly bounce off it. So I do want to kind of dig into that. And my thinking here is to possibly give it a base coat that's like greenish, and then have a top coat that's like a reflective gold type color is my thinking. And so that'll give it kind of the orange tigery, deserty type coloring, and then also give it the metallic glossiness that I think a lot of people miss out on actually. And then just coincidentally, that's actually how I painted all the Sathar spaceships too, is a green undercoat and then gold on top, and that kind of simulates the counters, like the coloring you get in the books, frankly, that looked pretty good to my eye. It kind of, you know, all the Sadar spaceships are named after diseases, and it kind of gives it this kind of like sickly off tone together. So I'm gonna kind of do more or less the same thing to this and see if it comes off well or not. So that's my idea. So green base coat, gold on top, and then some different colors for the appendages, like maybe tentacles in purple or something like that. Right, moist and reflective. So my two things were either I was going to go silver or I was going to go gold, and I figured, well, the spaceships are gold and everybody else makes them yellow, so let's see how that works. Could be a terrible mistake, but that's my plan here. Oh God, I've got my hands in rubber. Oh boy. Just dunk my hands in the rubber cup. Get that out of the way there. You know, this is a great suggestion, Laura Sudo. At the moment, I don't have a clear gloss coat to put on top. That would be a good idea to make it extra moist looking. It's funny that they picked the word moist as a descriptor of the thing's coat. And it's almost like they were intentionally like, you know, they're evil and villainous and terrifying, and we're just going to pick like the most evil descriptors we can pick and smash it together. All right, and so I'm grabbing my palette and my brushes and my Vallejo basic gaming color set here. So undercoat, I'm going to make green. I got two greens here. I got verdant green. Well, that's in Spanish. I got dark green and I got goblin green. So I think goblin green is the direction I'm going to go in. Yeah, clear UV resin dribbles. That's a good idea. Whoops, that's the wrong green. You know, I gotta get these molds out of the way or I'm gonna bump into them at some point. That's better. All right, so there's goblin green that I'm gonna use for the base coat there. Too careful about this. Now maybe my only regret tonight is I don't have multiple miniatures to put in line, but I will say that the blister pack that this comes with actually had two quick deaths in the blister pack, so I do have one in reserve in case I screw this up remarkably, or I want to do the mold making duplication process possibly. Yeah, Lord Sudo, I agree with that. So, sometime moist went evil. back in the 80s, they had those moist, soft cookies, which you thought were the devil. Yeah, I'm actually wondering, like, had moist gone evil at this point, or was that coincidental? Like a weird descriptor. I will admit, I'm actually having trouble, like, visualizing, like, why you'd be, like, I don't know. I guess quick deaths can appear anywhere, so they're not purely just in the desert. Where was my painting plans? Yeah, so let's do this, and then gold on top, and then purple. I was thinking purple tentacles tail tip. And then I was thinking, I was like, should the eyes, right, so the eyes on those eye stalks, should they be like white to contrast as much as possible, or should they be orange or green or something like that, like cat eyes? Like right this second, I feel like white would contrast the best. Now, while I'm waiting for that to dry a little bit, so I can put some metallic gold on top, let me just dig into my complaint about the scaling in the Star Frontiers game. And for some reason, this is the thing that I always get. This is always I get hung up on the scaling. I'm just realizing now in any game. So, there are things about the Star Frontiers game I really like. And, and then I think several of us said there's going to be details you're going to run into that you're going to be aggravated about. And so, in particular, the scaling issue is aggravating me just a little bit. Try my brush here. Okay, so we were looking at the illustration to the quick death creature here, and then which again is quite a bit larger than this miniature I'm working on. And then the other thing I noticed, because I was kind of thinking about this monster, other monsters, things that I could kit bash or get some kind of like fill-in miniature, and I was scaling and how big should they be. Again, thinking about the Megasaurus that's like 10 meters long. There's some other stuff that's that big or possibly even bigger. And so in the Star Frontiers rules for creatures, they have, categories for different sizes. Like, for example, it says the quick death is just large. Most of them, they don't give a specific meter sizing. They just say large or giant or medium or small or whatever. The quick death is supposed to be large. And the categories, let me pull it up here. So now we're actually looking at text out of Star Frontiers book. So here's the categories for creature sizes in Star Frontiers. Where the creature's size affects how dangerous the creature is. For game purposes, creatures are divided into 5 different size groups: tiny, small, medium, large, and giant. And of course, we're kind of accustomed to this, like later D&D defined, these same kind of things. So you notice that the size categories are both in length and weight, right? Actually, weight comes first. So tiny creatures are less than 5 kilograms. They can be up to 25 centimeters long, right? That's a quarter of a meter. Small creatures weigh from 5 to 20 kilograms and maybe from 25 centimeters to 1 meter. Medium creatures are 20 to 200 kilograms, are between 2 and 5 meters long. Large creatures are from 200 to 1,500 kilograms and between 2 and 5 meters long. And giant creatures are much larger, more than 5 meters. So you notice that the length of the medium and the large is the same. Medium and large creatures are both supposed to be 2 to 5 meters long, although the weight's different by a factor of times 10, basically. And you notice that there's no category that encompasses anything from 1 to 2 meters, like people. Right, like people are customarily somewhere between 1 and 2 meters long, and that actually doesn't fall in any category. I'm like, that's a bit of an oversight. Now, obviously, you would assume, right? I'm like, was there a typo there? Was there? See, now was like the medium category supposed to be 1 to 2 meters, maybe? And then most people would then fall in the medium category. Maybe that was supposed to be it. Okay, look. Let's get real. Let's get real, shall we? I don't mind soft baked cookies. I've bought them and I've enjoyed them. I'm actually not. I'm big tent. You know what? I'm big tent when it comes to cookies. Hard cookies, great. Yep, I get it. Right. I make them. Right. I make them. I'll eat a soft batch cookie and enjoy it. You know what? If you get some soft batch cookies and you don't want them, just send them right over here. Send them over to Wandering DM Central. I will eat them on camera and enjoy them. What do you want? A cookie? Yes, I do. Yeah, right. So maybe that and I'm accustomed to. I guess it was D&D 3rd edition, I think, that set up defined categories, and I thought it was reasonable that they used a factor of like ×2 in each category. So I think it was right 1 to 2 feet, 2 to 4 feet, 4 to 8 feet. That's where people would fall in. 8 to 16 feet, 16 to 32 feet. I think, if I recall correctly. So when I pulled up this page here in Star Frontiers, I was expecting to see the same thing basically. And then it was like, wait, what? I guess the most reasonable thing would be for the medium should have been 1 to 2. And then you almost have the 1 to 5 preferred gradation scale happening. That probably the medium should have been 1 to 2. That's clearly going to be a typo. Somehow when I saw this a couple weeks ago, I wasn't able to decode that. That should have been 1 to 2 meters, right? Then that would solve a whole lot of problems. Yeah. So let's assume that the large is correct at 2 to 5 meters. Then the quick death, which is large, right? So basically, if you do the conversion from 25 millimeters for a person, you turn it back into imperial, right? It's about 1 inch per 2 meters, right? 1 inch per 2 meters. So the large thing could legitimately be between 1 inch and 2.5 inches. So let me flip back to my desktop. So, right, that miniature is just about 1 inch, which is the minimum, right? It's the smallest you could possibly make it and be legitimately in that large scale size compared to the humans. And it could have more reasonably been, 1.5 inches. I'm not counting the tail, obviously. But you normally don't count the tail when you're measuring creatures' size. So it could have been up to 2.5 inches. Would have been more impressive. So if you do kit bash your own, feel free to make it like 2 inches, 2.5 inches. All that stuff is legitimate. That was about as small as they could make it. Technically, I guess that counts. This video may have triggering talk about soft batch cookies. We don't do a lot of trigger warnings around these parts, but you know what? Maybe I should do that. Good. An idea at least as good as soft baked cookies. Okay, Jerry. Of course you're going to make it complicated. I don't know. I don't know. I will say that the largest the largest creature in this rule set actually is a giant Sathar mutated attack snake, which on the table could be actually legitimately 10 inches long. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the other quick death of the king is a total duplicate. Yeah, no difference at all. Good question. Yeah, there's if you look, you could somewhere there's a website that has all the miniatures that they made, and some of them are like these really far out, exotic, weird alien monsters that, I mean, you may not, you would never use it more than once at most, I don't think. But the quick deaths show up a number of times. There actually are places where they show up in, because I guess the rules actually do say they, about half the time, they're in a mated pair that's hunting, which is like approximately the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. And the two miniatures are the same. Is this dry now? Having yacked all this time. It's mostly dry. It looks a little moist, but I think that's just the light. Yeah, that's pretty dry. I think I can put another coat on there, actually. All right, so we'll see how well this goes. So, all right, so here's my polished gold, right? So this is what I'm going to use for the top coat there. And I guess just talking to myself here, I don't want to slather it on like I normally do. So I want to I'll make it just a little bit dry, brushy a little bit, and hopefully the green will kind of tonally come through a little bit. And this is, for what it's worth, is exactly how I colored the Cathar, how I painted the Cathar spaceships when I made those years ago. And the funny thing is, I always remember this. I was working on those spaceships with the same color scheme, and my partner Isabelle comes in, and she's got a Masters of Fine Arts in sculpting and stuff like that. And she came in and she went, no. What you're doing there, it makes them look like they're diseased or something. And I very happily got to turn around and say, yeah, they're literally all named after diseases. So I was like, one of my more successful graphic design jobs, you might say. That is exactly what I wanted. Okay, so just a little drier on the brush than I normally do. Let's see how this works. Oops. Maybe a little bit more than that, I think. Just seeing how much I can put on it. It's funny, you know, because so here with my own eyeballs, it looks more gold than it does online. But I do think I want to be a little bit more liberal there. Try this. guess I can be pretty aggressive with that. That's not... It certainly looks moist. Yeah, I get that going at the moment. So maybe the green is sufficiently bold that I need to kind of get a deeper coat on it than I expected. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, I'm probably going to need multiple coats with this metallic color. Yeah, it's funny. It's like locally, it's pretty gold colored. You know, it's funny. I guess as I'm thinking, like gold and green are like weirdly kind of close, I guess. So here's the totally green side. Here's the gold side. All right, that's fine. So I'm clearly going to need multiple coats here. I didn't have to be too worried about it. The green is definitely coming through. Do that again right now. My concern about being over aggressive was not a problem. That's funny. Okay, so we'll let that dry a little bit. I'm going to put at least another coat on there. The quick death, it's funny, the quick death is so ridiculously fast. Like, I think I figured out in scale, like like any tabletop isn't big enough for a full movement of the thing. How big? I think they have like the top level speed value or something like that. Just looking that up right now. So they are. Okay, the movement is very fast. What is very fast movement? I'm looking that up on my referee screen here. Okay, so very fast movement is 120 meters per turn, which should be, like in scale, should be 60 inches, should be 5 feet on a table. So when they show up in my game, I can point like to the other side of the room and go, you see something like over here, and then one turn later, it's like already in your face attacking you. Which I feel is like pretty intimidating. I assume, like in the desert, I assume it's got like a contrail of sand being kicked up behind it, probably. Good way to do this. Yeah, the green really cuts through, doesn't it? I guess I might not have gotten the green totally dry either. Nice. I should mention, so while we're waiting for this dry, I suppose I should mention that my partner Isabelle, that shows up from time to time on the channel here, particularly our Book of War stream, seasons 1, 2, and also our D&D and art reviews on the Sunday Talk Show, has had her premiere of a play here in New York that she's starring in called Apostrophe. The premiere was last night at the, what is the name of the theater again? The American Theater of Actors, and that's running through this weekend for what it's worth. So if anybody was in New York looking for something to do, we could recommend that. Play Apostrophe, rave reviews. She's very good, so we're pretty excited about that. Jerry, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, the quick deaths are not cybernetic. And I can't remember if I don't think they do have immunity to dose grenades, actually. There are other say there are attack monsters that are cybernetic, as a matter of fact. So there are other things you could possibly at least partly use your robotic skill in. I don't know if you remember what they are, but there's other attack monsters that actually have cyber in the name of the monster that way. Jerry, thanks for the applause on Isabelle's premiere last night of the Apostrophe play. Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. She is a very talented and hardworking performer, so we were happy about that. And that also explains why I can't get her on the stream very much nowadays. She's highly in demand, and it's gotten harder for me to ask to get her time. So hopefully she'll reappear on the channel at some point. Now, I'll also say that Paul and I will be back this Sunday for more Wandering DMs on Sunday, and this is Mother's Day, so I should point out we plan on having a very special Mother's Day episode this Sunday for Wandering DMs, and as always, that's Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, if you are not already a patron of the Wandering DMs channel, we would love for you to join our patrons that support what we're doing and allow us the resources to make these kinds of things happen, frankly. And if you'd like to join them, please visit patreon.com/wanderingdms. And all of our tiers get you access to our Discord server, where we're constantly having conversations about science fiction, horror role-playing games, and a lot of D&D and old D&D and new D&D and miniatures painting and casting and things like that. So, and we also get a lot of ideas for upcoming Wandering DMs shows. So it's patreon.com/wanderingdms. And we'd love to see you on our Discord server. All right. So, of course, I'm impatient. You know, what I should have done is I should have had multiple miniatures, right? I should have had multiple miniatures prepped for painting. And I just had this one that has been on my mind for a couple weeks. All right. You can probably, you can see that's pretty goldy there at this point. I am going to put another coat on, though. Of course, I got about as much paint on my fingers as I got on the miniature. As usual. Yeah, actually, you know what? While I'm waiting for that, I'm going to pull out a couple of other miniatures in this same box set. And I think I've had them on screen before. So the ones in the... half of these in this 83 box set are, as we said, in spacesuits. And I suppose, right, you could declare it to be combat armor if you wanted to, even though that isn't the rules, as we said. So that is clearly a human in a spacesuit. And I'm not sure whether the weapon that they're holding, if it's just kind of short or it's, like, broken. It's a weird weapon. So I don't think it's broken. It's just a slightly weird. It's clearly two-handed and it has this giant barrel on the end. So maybe that's supposed to be like a gyrojet or something, or an automatic rifle. The tip is just a little bit bent on this one. And there's that. And then you have, okay, so spoiler if you're a player. So you have right, here's the bad guy Sathar, and they're huge. They're bigger than this Quick Death miniature. There's this, and then here's the version in a spacesuit, which is pretty funky. Probably the next thing I'm going to duplicate is this. I probably should have at least a couple Sathar miniatures available, so I probably will duplicate this. I wonder how much of a trouble this is going to be now that I mention it. Because you have these big, long, sticky out parts in different directions. And also the laser goes up. Should I do it like this? I might need a bigger... Actually, this guy I might need a bigger molding box for, actually. And then the if I haven't had it on screen before, the really funky one is there's another, you know, there's two humans outside spacesuits, which we made molds for tonight. Yeah, this is a scaling issue, right? It is a little bit confusing about whether that was. I mean, I think that the size of this Sathar miniature, when I pulled it out of the box, surprised me. It's so much bigger than everything else. But I immediately liked it. I like the bad guys being big like that. Like they're giant, super intelligent worms. So I actually kind of immediately loved it when I pulled it out of the box. Like, oh, that's great. I didn't think they were that big, so I kind of am happy about that. But if you look at the 1984 box, right, totally different size. Actually, I'm just going to pull it out right now. This is the 1984 Spacefarers box. The people are all sized the same. And then, okay, Lance of Rusk. What are you? Right, and then here's the Sather in this box, who has a much more elaborate weapon system, but is like half the size. So I do like this one more, personally. Well, that's interesting, Jerry. So Zeb Cook said in an interview the Sather were supposed to be a player race, which makes you think they were supposed to be closer to human sized. I didn't know that. Fascinating. Did he say what we're going to count as villains then? And it's interesting because, like, in the core rulebook, I mean, they're presented in the same format as all the player character races. So it has the same, same full page size count, same, like, statistics, same, modifiers, special abilities. So they're totally presented with all the information you need to use them as a player character. It's just that they're, completely unrepentingly villainous. Well, that's fascinating. I saw a question today on the Stack Exchange RPG forum, and the question was, granted that original D&D bards were this, multi-classed thing. You had to go through fighter and then thief and then you get some druid skills and then you counted as a bard. Why was that changed later to just be a single class that you could just start out at first level at? And there's more nuance to it, but the top answer was basically Zeb Cook didn't like it. So when Zeb was the editor leading the project for second edition AD&D, he got to make those kinds of decisions. Now, the more nuanced answer is practically nobody liked it. So all the designers thought it was too complicated, didn't have enough people succeeding at playing it, wasn't worth the space. So you've got quotes from Gary Gygax at some point said that it had been a mistake and it was too complicated and not enough people played it. And supposedly, like, when they were coming out with second edition AD&D, the designers in-house were actually determined to just cut bards entirely. Just have them gone from the game entirely. But they put out a survey, and a sufficiently large enough people answered they love bards, they adore bards. Please don't cut from the game. That is what saved it and actually, kept it in some form in second edition. Yep, it's a legitimate, right? It's a legitimate critique that all that work to get before you were officially declared to be a bard, right, was like a whole career, a whole campaign before you even got there. So it's a legitimate point. It's not crazy. And good point about the good insight about what was going to be the villain race before the Sather. Interesting. And that sort of makes sense too. I can see why management would want. I can kind of see why you'd want to have like a canonical villain race. That's an interesting point, actually. Yeah. It's a weird class. Again, I think when I was a kid and I got it, like, I really wanted to dig into those kinds of like exotic niches, right? The weird things in the game that arguably shouldn't have been there and are easy to forget about. And we kind of still want to do this today. You kind of want to dig into those details that kind of nobody else is aware of and make use of them. psionics too, that kind of thing. When you made the switch from basic D&D to advanced, and you get all that kind of weird arcane stuff, it seemed exciting. But yeah, in practice, did I have anybody that actually worked their way up to Bard? No. We had times that we declared somebody, at a high level had done that or something. And that's reasonable. I that totally makes sense, Lord Suda, why you'd turn back to BX at some point. And I've gone through phases where I think at some point in college I was swearing to God I was going to only play BX or the the Rule Cyclopedia compilation of that kind of stuff. And there are still days where I'm really close to saying that I could base my house rules off BX. It's like sufficiently close, but not quite. All right, let me get speaking of the bad guy sailor, let me get this guy out of here. But I will, let me just point out the one other miniature that I think is super funky. So there's, one Duralocite and one Duralocite in a spacesuit. And there's, one Vrusk and one Vrusk in a spacesuit, and you say the Sailor here. And then, of course, there's two humans, right? There's a man, woman, human in normal clothing. And there's two humans in spacesuits. One, right, which is just standing, and then one who's got a rocket pack, right, and actually is launching off on this exhaust component, right? So here's the human of any gender, it doesn't matter, right, with a rocket pack, and then they get mounted on this thing. I don't know if I can get that to sit there without glue. But anyway, they're actually mounted on this like exhaust fumes, taking off with a rocket pack. Now, again, how often are you in this exact specific position and altitude? I don't know. Is there a rocket pack in the basic game? No, there is not. There isn't. I think in like the Spaceship, the Nighthawks game supplement, I think there is. But so it's a funky. Someone clearly had fun sculpting this, but I got to admit, this is the least likely to be used miniature in the set. So I'm not planning on duplicating this because I don't think this is the most useful thing in the world. I like the miniature and I don't think I would ever use it. Yeah. I feel like at some point I've gotten this to balance. Oh, maybe if I do it in this direction. Yeah, like that. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, there's a glide jet. You're right. That's a good point. It's got a rocket as a component. Yeah, so maybe it's just about maybe the wings are just about to snap out. I actually really like the exhaust sculpt. For some reason, that's got like a lot of dynamism to it. Oh God. So let me do one more coat of gold on my my reflective golden quick death here. Yeah. I gotta admit that the first time you see that, it's a little wonky. Put that over here. There's a lot of comments you could make about that, frankly. All right, let me do another coat here so he's not quite so green. We know each other pretty well on this stream. That's great. But we would have been disappointed if you hadn't said that. We needed that. It's like going to a concert and having the band not play the hits. You know, fans are gonna be upset. In there. Okay, that's coming out pretty yellowy, which is what I wanted. We are huge fans of orange house cats around here, so I kind of wanted to allude to that a little bit in my coloring. All right, that's a good start, right? So again, I let this dry, and then my plan is to make the tentacles here like purple to make them a little bit more visible, right? And then we were talking about possibly like making. So I definitely want the teeth here to be like bright white to stand out, and then we were talking about maybe white, maybe orange for the eye stalks up here. Like, and again, you know, because I'm thinking about. I want it to look nice, but then I also want it to be useful at the game table. So even if it's not maybe the most beautiful thing in the world, I kind of want to be able to communicate to my players what the threat spots are. So make some kind of like really obvious coloring to the tail to kind of warn them about that. Make the eyes really high contrast, so that they can see that is what the eyes are on those things. And kind of highlight whatever the danger spots are as a method of specifically communicating to the players what they're confronting and what the issues are. So, even if I'm not the most beautiful painter, I'm kind of trying to do aesthetics, but also game communication at the same time. So I think I'm okay with that. Rocket guy in here. All right, so I think I'm done with waiting for this one miniature to dry between coats. So I think note to self, in the future I should have, and I've been accidentally doing this in prior weeks, I should have multiple miniatures available so I can work on one and let it dry. And I guess that's a more efficient way of spending my painting time than this one particular standout thing. But enjoyable. I like it. It's cool. So I think I'm going to let this dry. I might come back later and do like actually another coat and then start doing the detail work of the threat zones on the thing. And I guess I'm going to wrap up here for tonight. And again, we'll be back Sunday with more Wandering DMs for our special Mother's Day episode. Happy Mother's Day if you're doing stuff on Sunday with your mother. If you're not, we'll be here. We'll be here doing our gaming stuff, and we'll plan to come back next Thursday, and we'll flip over our molds again and make the other part of the man-woman human molds, and then we'll get ready for the week later where we can actually cast those things. And so thanks again for hanging out here on a Thursday night as I do some miniature stuff, and hope you can join us again next Thursday. And hope you have a great weekend, whatever you're doing. Join us on Sunday again for more Wandering DMs, and then we'll plan to see you next time. Not more than normal. Thanks a bunch, you guys. You always make it so much more fun doing this with you. So I'll plan to see you next time. Take care, everybody.